Mic's not on. There it is. Now the mic's on. Now you can hear me. Okay. I'd like to introduce our next panel on sustainability, but of course coming up with a new definition of it, one that actually applies not pre-pandemic, but pandemic and moving forward. So please welcome to the panel, Fahd Hamid Adine. He's the chairman and chief executive officer of the Saudi Tourism Authority. Fahd. Geoffrey Kent, who needs no introduction, the founder and the chairman of Abercrombie & Kent. Norma Elena Negrete Aguayo, the chief executive officer of ECPAT in Mexico, and I will explain what that is if you don't know. Raki, where are you? Raki Phillips, the chief executive officer of Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Development Authority. And Luis García Codrón, the chief executive officer of Europamundo Vacations. So please, everybody, welcome. There are, hopefully, I'll need a little translator here. Someone could give me one, that would be great. Let's start with unintended consequences. And for that one, I'm going to Fahd, because talk about timing. At the very time that the world was closing, you were opening. And so you weren't operating from an old playbook, you were writing the playbook as it happened. So what could you bake in to sustainability through social responsibility from day one?
I think thank you WTTC for inviting us, and thank you, Peter, for this exciting panel. To answer you in short, I think the motto for Saudi was, as we are protecting lives, we needed to also protect liveliness of the sector. So we realized we couldn't open our borders for international tourists, but we could definitely put controls and measures for domestic tourism. And I think that made us learn a lot. Our great collaboration between government entities, particularly tourism ecosystem and Ministry of Health, helped a lot in doing so. And that resulted in activating cruise lines for the first time in the world, right? When every cruise line was at halt. Now, it wasn't an easy ride, I tell you that. But our first actually cruise ship, our first trip had a COVID case and we returned. Did we stop? No. We realized we got to do what we do and fix our PCR testing process. So that resilience in protecting liveliness of the sector and jobs is, I think, the main driver for what we did right. So we learned, fixed, and went again. We just never stopped. And the good thing is the government commitment into vaccinating all residents, be it Saudi nationals and not, made things a lot easier. So if I may sum it up, I think it is the commitment from all government bodies within Saudi and the motto of learn, fix, and improve. The easy thing to say is, we're not going to do it, it's difficult. Let's be safe. The truth is, we are going to protect and save lives, but we need to equally save liveliness of these businesses.
So let's go beyond that, based on the fact that the kingdom is open. The kingdom was opening during this time. And so many of the plans that you had, whether it's the Red Sea Project or NEOM, you had to bake in sustainability from day one, which a lot of people didn't get a chance to do. They were revising their playbook, you were writing it.
I think this is general about Saudi as a destination. The fact that Saudi is a new destination, it has an opportunity and a responsibility to learn from all other destinations. So there is no excuse for a new destination not to learn from others. And ecotourism, the way we see it, is not a subsector of tourism. It is the way for tourism going forward. And if I am to answer what Kathleen asked in the previous panel, whether this is a responsibility of the industry or it's the traveler, I would comfortably say it is the industry. And the industry is both the regulator and the businesses. And I think with that in mind, you can easily activate the responsible competitiveness of any commercial strategy. If this is what they got to do, they will lead with inspiration to consumers, building awareness, reward, gamification. They'll do it all to get the consumers to choose naturally an eco. And I think the millennials are going there and driving us. Greta Thunberg is a perfect example of how global conversation on environment is growing. And as far as we're concerned, you said Red Sea Project. I can definitely tell you we're going way beyond the standards set by the UN on sustainability. We're trying to innovate. We are, I mean, Red Sea as an example, I'm sure I'm not going to bore you with that, but there are lots of measures that are being taken to create the next generation of responsible commercial moves, including airports, in a carbon neutral airport, getting off the grid, biofuel for all our operations at the Red Sea Project. It's a fascinating initiatives there.
Not to mention solar.
Of course.
You're the perfect destination for solar. Raki, there's one thing to have the landscape to deal with it, then you've got to be able to manage it. You are a small enough destination that you can manage it from day one, but at the same time, not too many years before Saudi opened, you didn't have tourism. You didn't have mass events. Now you're starting to build that into the development scheme. What are you doing in this situation for the wildlife there, for the ecosystems, to make sure that we don't learn, or actually that we do learn from the mistakes of others?
So good morning, Peter, and that's a very valid question. For those that don't know, Ras Al Khaimah is the northernmost emirate in the UAE. We're a 45-minute drive outside of Dubai International Airport. But what makes us very special is we've got the three phenomenal topographies from 64 kilometers of white sand beach, the deserts, and Jebel Jais, the highest mountain in the UAE. We're very focused on being a nature-driven destination and to offer guests and tourists and visitors alike everything that's very nature-driven. The pandemic has hit us tremendously. I mean, tourism's the worst hit industry. I'm on the weekly calls with WTTC. And when you look at the UAE being an oil-rich country, tourism contributes to about 12% of the GDP of the country, and over 750,000 employees work in that industry. So for us, tourism is an important factor, but what we're doing in Ras Al Khaimah is we're developing the destination to truly be a sustainable destination, not just from an environmental perspective, but also really looking at a cultural perspective. So that means protecting the 7,000 years of history that we have from our 4 temporary UNESCO heritage sites, and also getting the communities involved. The beauty of the Middle East, and especially in the GCC, places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they're very tribal. So it's so important to be able to work with the local tribes, to work with the local families, to make them part of the vision that you want to do as you grow the destination. Modernization is something that the UAE has done phenomenally well, but in Ras Al Khaimah we're taking it a step back and doing it in a very sustainable way and in a very, very natural way. We work very closely with our EPG, our Environmental Protection Group, in order to make sure that the wildlife that we have, I don't know if you know, Peter, but a couple of months ago on Instagram, it blew up. There was a pink lake in Ras Al Khaimah that some blogger found and started taking pictures, and people were going, and it was great. And a lot of people that want to have that Instagram moment were going to visit the pink lake. But we stopped them because we wanted to really understand the formation of the pink lakes, the algae that's in it, and how to protect it if it needed to be protection. So we really take it on a case-by-case basis, but it is ingrained into our plans.
You know, you talk about sustaining history, right? That goes back to FOD, because part of your entire campaign right now is history of a rape,
Correct.
right? That is also part of a sustainable approach.
Absolutely. So I missed the question.
Raki was talking about sustaining the history. That is part of your entire marketing approach now.
Absolutely.
About Arabia.
Yes, so, you know, for 7,000 years, the land of Saudi has been the land of Arabia. So it's from ancient Arabia all to today's modern Arabia. And I think the preservation of historical sites is one thing that everybody is doing. What we're keen on doing is also protecting and growing sustainable tourism into villages and rural areas. And I think These offer equally important, authentic experiences that are very inspiring for travelers, but more interestingly, they disseminate wealth. They create opportunities. And if you look at the trends today, Peter, millennials are looking for not just bragging rights, but they are actually asking for responsible measures being taken. Yes, they come with sense of entitlement, but that actually is a good thing for tourism. And if you look at all sectors around the world, technology is stealing away jobs. Except for tourism, tourism can still offer these authentic experiences for future travelers and the millennials. And you cannot take the human interaction from any authentic experience. And rural villages would be ideal, offering for consumers and important for social development.
As long as you can continue the conversation with good storytellers.
Absolutely, and you get I think with Saudi during its leadership of the G20, launching the Al-Ula communique, which is the sustainable model, and the fact that global leaders recognize this framework, I think it's telling us that this is going to be the future, and it's going to be the competitive land field.
You know, beware of the law of unintended consequences during the pandemic. I don't know if any of you experienced it. I've experienced it twice, where in areas that you would never expect to see this kind of activity, the wildlife started to retake their own geography. They started to retake their territory. We saw animals coming down into the cities, walking freely. I saw 3 weeks ago dolphins in the Bosphorus. I mean, never, right? So Geoffrey, this is an area for you so much because you are so committed to wildlife preservation based on everything you've done. The other aspect of this is that during the pandemic, being able to preserve endangered species became even more of a challenge because with no money coming into the system, no money to support the rangers, the poachers were starting to come back in. Give us a report, if you can, about what's happening in sustainable travel when it comes to preserving those species.
Thank you, Peter. Obviously, I've been heavily involved in preserving wildlife for years, and in fact started Friends of Conservation in 1982, which was when I first got my enlightening, you know, and I've been working it ever since. And I knew from the very beginning that you had to protect the local communities, because the local communities didn't protect their animals, nobody would. So we had to start with that. And how did we do that? Actually, we did it with cash, you know, because that's what people want. And so we created from our first camp ever that the local community would receive money for every client coming. My first camp, or one of them, was in the Masai Mara in Kenya. And it worked brilliantly. I mean, within a year, they'd moved out their manatas. They were taking all this money. They said, could they build a school? Yes. Could they build a hospital? Yes. So we built a school and a hospital. So we started to evolve onto education and health. I'll answer your question in a minute. So that's just the background to it all. And really, we did a good job. And then of course, comes this dreadful pandemic. And it hit everyone very badly. On the actual poaching side, ironically what happened, in the early stages, I mean, just sort of stopping like, say, 1 or 2 months ago, actually, poaching went down. There was limited poaching. Why? Because the airlines weren't flying. So they had nobody to ship the goods out on, you know? So
it all gets down to airlift, doesn't it?
That's right. So they just stopped poaching for a bit, right? But in the last 3 months, it's picked up badly again. We've had like 46 rhino killed. In Botswana, we do something with the Botswana Defense Forces on saving rhino. If you think of elephants, you remember 100 years ago we had like 12 million elephants in the world, and we're now down to about 486,000. I mean, this just shows the enormity of where we've become. It hasn't poached it, but what's really happening is this bushmeat poaching is starting, and they're cutting all the forests down. So we get tremendous cutting down of primeval forests, which is really, really important. There's more carbon in our primeval forests than almost anywhere else around. So we're working on that too. My gorilla project in Windy in Uganda, which I started with President Museveni, like, I don't know, a long time ago, 25 years ago, where we literally came in and we got like 330 gorillas, which we habituated, and we took those gorillas, and then we we're the first to bring in tourism, and we brought in millions of dollars to the Fatwa tribe there. We found they were sick with AIDS, so we built a hospital. We used to be a fig tree with one doctor would come once a week. That became the full Windy Hospital. It handles 60,000 outpatients all the time. It has nurses training, surgeries and everything, all from an idea about saving the gorillas. And now that one idea, representing 489 mountain gorillas today, represents half of the world's mountain gorillas left in the world. So it just shows one idea can produce great things. Poaching. Yeah, a lot of rangers have lost their jobs. We're trying to implement that. We have our own Abercrombie Kent philanthropy where we fund projects like this. We fund schools, we fund hospitals, and also we're deeply involved in conservation. And we just really pray that tourism does come back fast because it's really difficult without it.
I mean, I think one of the examples happened in Rwanda, again with the mountain gorillas, where they had to convince the poachers to change their lifestyle and their manner of earning a living so that they actually perceived the animals worth more alive than dead.
There you are. That was a simple philosophy, exactly.
Now, of course, one of the buzzwords in sustainability is carbon offsets, and that brings me over to Luis, because his operation has been offsetting carbon for a long time and doing it successfully. But Luis, my guess to you is that you really want to go beyond that right now as we emerge from COVID-19.
Nosotros como empresa,
we as a company, I would rather speak in my own language. As a company, we've done a lot of practices for many years now. Our responsibility as businessmen and as leaders, our responsibility is to build a better world. It is not up to the others, it is up to each one of us. It is up to you, it is up to us, because we may think about many things that we've done. What I see is that there are many businessmen worried about sustainability, many hotel owners investing in sustainability. Society calls for sustainability. I remember 25 years ago that people wanted quality, but now they have forgotten about quality. Now everybody's speaking about sustainability, and I'm sure that in the next 25 years, sustainability will be part of our lives. Hotels are worried, companies are worried, the society is worried. There will be airplanes that will not be polluting, but we need to preserve our planet. I come from a different generation, and when I was a child, there was a huge danger because we would hear about a war that could destroy the planet, and sustainability is something we need to keep in our minds always. The fact that things happen a few times doesn't mean that they won't happen again. We had forgotten about plagues. Plagues exist. We have forgotten about danger, the danger that humans are facing every single day due to the lack of tolerance, due to the lack of respect to others. We lived our childhood under those fears. As a tourism industry, we should feel proud because we are the messenger doves of peace, and this is the greatest sustainability that we can provide. Every time a person goes to Saudi Arabia cannot be against the inhabitants of Saudi Arabia. Every time a person walks the streets of Iran cannot wish war for Iran. We need to be messengers of peace. If something we've done in our company is to try to find sustainability in factor number one that tourism can contribute with, which is peace. We have travelers that come from all continents. We need to come together to share experiences. We hold ceremonies for peace. We want people from different countries to interact. Gentlemen, we speak about sustainability, but without peace, there's no sustainability. And please be assured that tourism has been the best way to send a message of interaction, respect to the others, to not have fear for other cultures. I always follow my days in peace. I follow peace every day.
Specific example, if you could share with us. Other than your sentiments, can you give us an example of where you have gotten people together to form that common ground in the process of travel and tourism?
I could give you several examples. For example, our travelers that go to Greece, we would send them to meet the Syrian refugees for them to know about their situation. When we would be in Israel and Palestine, we would bring Christians from Palestine and Jews from the Sephardians Jews so that they could interact. Now we're trying in some trips to have peace encounters, like for example in Jordan, 30 kilometers from Syria or 15 kilometers away from Palestine. We bring travelers from different places in a small Orthodox church. In Jordan, we make every traveler to speak one word in favor of peace, one desire for peace. And we see that people coming from different countries, from different cultures, from different religions, all and each of them desire to understand the culture of others, and all of them desire peace.
You're doing that in an almost incidental way. It's not written in a program. It just happens.
Well, we developed a package with a group of 300 people. They were our own tour operators, our own representatives. We held a conference in Jordan in 2019. We held an event and we brought people from everywhere. So in our buses, we put them together, or we have parallel programs for people who speak Russian, Arabic, English, or Portuguese, or Spanish. And we try, whenever we have enough people, to bring them together to make a ceremony in that little church, in that small country, in that place that is lacking peace. We also want to do in other areas where we also want to bring together Europe and the Americas, and also we want to do it with the Muslim world, to remember that we need to give sustainability to our planet, because sustainability will never exist if there's no tolerance, respect, tolerance, and peace.
So I could suggest that you could help me out in the United States and just get the 48 U.S. continental states together. Just a thought. I said 48 continental United States, not including Alaska and Hawaii, Raki.
Peter.
Yes, Bob.
Yeah. I have to say, it's fascinating what you just said. Well, you know, when we announced our visa in late 2019, it would basically, that was the first day opening up. And we had a debate internally, and Gloria is very aware of that day. What do we say to the world? Is it e-visa? And the truth is, we were searching for the one consistent good in tourism. And our theme at the time was open doors, open hearts. That's all we needed to say. And I genuinely believe that you don't need to do more to drive that. I think naturally travelers are cultural, curious human beings. And there is always good in one's soul. Tourism naturally brings that to it does front loading of your goodness, because you want to have good connection with land, with people, with culture. So politicians, what they need to do, and I mean, I'm a public servant myself, need to facilitate that, and they don't need to think of exchange programs, political delegations, you know, all the things that they try to do and engineer. Just make tourism flourish, and people will naturally be peace messengers as much as they enjoy. And the good and the good is what's driving us all. You just need to, whether it's a hotel, it's a country, your brand needs to leverage on that innate goodness in travelers' hearts.
Not to mention curiosity, why don't you share with everybody that the day you opened up, how many applications did you get?
I can tell you, we had a target of 50,000 visas the first 100 days, right? We got 400 in 90 days, 400,000 in 90 days. So.
Now, you talk about open hearts, and I'll add one more to that, open minds, about awareness. And that brings me to Norma and ECPAT. For those of you who don't know what ECPAT means, it means End Child Prostitution and Trafficking. It's an organization that I've been working with for many, many years as a journalist. And it's a different kind of a definition of sustainability. So why don't you explain, just as a starter, Norma, what you do, and then how that fits in to sustainability and, of course, the area of human rights.
Sí, claro. Gracias, Peter.
Yes, of course, Peter. Well, first off, I shall say that ECPAT is a world network. The purpose of this network is to end prostitution, pornography, and children trafficking for sexual purposes. The mission is that we all come together to prompt the world community so that all girls, boys, and adolescents may enjoy their basic rights free and safe from sexual exploitation. I would like to attract your attention so that you can see the importance of presence of girls, boys, and adolescents in this wonderful summit. We saw the presence of the children in the opening ceremony with the beautiful choir of folk music, but also through their words, images, in all videos, both in this room as well as during lunchtime. We've seen the presence of boys, girls, and teenagers, and their presence is very important for touristic promotion. In Gloria Guevara's speech when she opened up the summit, she highlighted the importance of boys and girls. Also, we need to listen to them and to listen to the problems that they're facing in terms of sexual exploitation and children trafficking, because these problems have increased in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. And today, more than ever, the travel and tourism sector, in the effort made for reactivation, this sector should also protect not only wildlife, not only shall it focus on reducing the carbon print, but should also protect head-on our communities, our families, and particularly our sector should protect our boys, girls, and adolescents. There are many companies already that have joined us in our effort in terms of sustainability and social responsibility. And they have done so through several tools by acquiring several codes and procedures in order to detect on a timely manner these type of issues in their facilities and to act accordingly in order to protect boys, girls, and adolescents. However, there's still a big challenge out there because there's still a huge amount of companies that do not have those protocols, and their protocols are outdated. Some companies, they don't have the protocols so that they can be assessed in order to address the abuse that boys, girls, and adolescents suffer at their facilities and also at the communities where they are. So I believe, undoubtedly, and as it's been said, that I believe that the travel and tourism industry plays an important role, plays a critical role, so that on the one hand, with the due diligence procedures on human rights and also for the benefit of children to make a difference. The travel and tourism industry has the possibility to work at different levels in order to have co-responsibility to prevent children trafficking and sexual exploitation. This is from zero tolerance implementation to these issues, because we need to know that sexual exploitation of children, boys, girls, and adolescents is not a niche of tourism. Therefore, we need to announce that. We need to let people know so that we can address it properly and so that we can raise awareness among guests and employees about the issue. We need to systematically train employees, staff, administrative staff, operations staff, because context is important, and we need to be continuously training. We need to continuously train people and to update them. And also governments need to take part, because we need to take joint actions in terms of co-responsibility for everyone to know what our share is so that we can all act for the well-being of our children.
A number of international airlines now are training their staff on how to recognize when somebody's being trafficked. There was a case that happened a few years ago where a man was checking in for a flight with a 12-year-old boy. The 12-year-old boy didn't seem to know where he was going. He wasn't holding his own passport. The gate agent didn't ask the right questions, even though it looked suspicious. They boarded the flight, and it was the flight attendant and the pilot who'd been trained, who recognized the issue and alerted authorities, and they stopped it. I remember 15 years ago, Marilyn Nelson, who was really a big part of ECPAT at the beginning, asking hotels if they would sign the pledge not to do business with people who were doing this. And very, very few hotels signed the pledge. That is now thankfully changing. And much the same way that Luis trains your guides to have those conversations about peace and common ground and mutual respect of religion and culture, that same training and those conversations still have to happen today. So I hope that people, when we're finished today, can engage you in a conversation to learn more about it, because it is a worthy cause, and thank you for doing what you do. Raki, let's crystal ball this a second, right? We've had a reset in the travel industry, an opportunity for many locations and destinations to do a do-over, but also to do a rethinking of not only the product that they're giving, but also the expectations of the travelers who will now be arriving, hopefully now that some of the borders are being opened. So I'm going to start with you and go right down the list here of where do you think the traveler expectations are changing, and how are you preparing for that as the doors are beginning to open? As it relates to sustainability, of course.
Okay. We're not going back to 2019, and I think that's been pretty obvious throughout the conference, that the conversations, if you're going to go back to doing business the way you were doing it pre-pandemic, you're going to fail. We have to look at doing business quite differently. The number one thing is going to be safety and security, and by safety, that in the old days, that might have covered human trafficking and things of that nature. But right now, it's the safety from a health perspective, the sanitization, the social distancing, the elements. And these will improve, and things will get a lot better as immunization increases, vaccinations, and all of that. But I think the programs that WTTC puts together with the Stay Safe programs and all of that, those all help. But I think now it just has to be ingrained, and training the people to be able to identify. So I mean, the UAE has fared well compared to maybe other destinations, but we've had to put restrictions in place for things like weddings or concerts or events. But we had to be smart about it in the sense that if you were going to host a wedding and you had a DJ on a platform that's 12 meters away, what's wrong with that? If you've got the right PCR testing. I mean, what we did here at the
and the right playlist.
And the right playlist, yeah. Absolutely. If there isn't a little bit of hip hop, I don't know if that's a wedding. But also, it was great to see the rapid testing procedures when we arrived here at the Moon Palace Resort, and to do the antigen test. And 5 minutes later, we all were able to convene safely and comfortably. The other thing we have to be passionate kooks about making sure that sustainability is ingrained into us. It's no longer saying we're not going to use plastic bottles or single-use plastic. It really has to be part of everything from the ownership down. Us as a government authority in Ras Al Khaimah, we've put metrics in order to reward hotel owners for eliminating food waste or minimizing food waste, for putting procedures together. And from a government perspective, from building, from operations, we've put all of those together. So I think the private sector and the public sector need to work together and pivot to make sure it's successful.
And as Geoffrey said, cash incentives don't hurt.
100%. I mean, honestly, that idea with the poachers that you put together is a brilliant idea. And in Ras Al Khaimah, we're doing that from a sustainability perspective.
Geoffrey, where do you move forward now in terms of the tours that you're operating, that your company's operating on a global scale, educating your guides to be able to have the conversation with your customers with all of these new expectations?
Yes, I mean, I think so. All of our trips rely on the guides at the end of the day, and all the guides actually work for us because we own the operating companies. And yes, they do follow what our guides tell them on everything, from sustainability to every part of wildlife law and everything, yes.
But are they actually investing in immersing your guests in the process of sustainability to show them basically how it all gets together? Meaning, it's one thing to have a mission statement, and it's one thing to talk about it, but you're laughing at me now. Go ahead, Fad.
No, I'm still waiting for my line.
But it's one thing to say things, but can you immerse them in the process so they learn from it?
Oh, no, of course we do that. As part of every trip, we take them to one of our Abercrombie Kent philanthropy schools, hospitals, whatever, with our guides, and we also have the NK philanthropy executive there, who then takes them around exactly the school that we've built, the children we've helped, the bicycle. We bring in thousands of bicycles to Africa every year, bicycles that are thrown away. We teach the people how to mend them. We have a bicycle mechanics training school. And we only give it to ladies to run, because the ladies are much smarter than the men, and they take care of the money much better. So the ladies run the bicycle schools. So all of that just shows how intrinsically we've built up this community. Again, going back to the community, maintains sustainability. And so you've got to do it that way around, to our effect.
Actually, I was just thinking about what Raki said. I think the time is allowing us to reset and rethink everything. Going back to what we were is definitely not the way. It's easier said than done. If you look at the growth, so since 2010, approximately to 2020, in one decade, the middle income class has nearly doubled from 1.8 to 3.4. The low-cost carrier has also doubled from 3,000 aircrafts to over 6,000. So basically what we're saying, people that can afford travel is only going to increase. We say that we're not going to go back to over-tourism. I don't think anybody's really addressing how. This, however, is not Saudi Arabia's challenge today. We're not at a stage where we're going back to anything. We're just barely starting. But we have responsibility, and I call it a responsibility, is never to do what others have learned not to, right? So I think we need to be extremely rigorous in our investments, because Saudi Arabia today is the largest investor in tourism globally. Just last year, when the business is super cold, our kitchen has been on fire. $4 billion were funded to investors in new hotels. I'm not talking about the government investment, which is far more than that. So our responsibility is to look at sustainability measures in master planning, in building material, in construction, down to, of course, services and awareness. And I think the last thing I would say is collaboration. I think this sector needs to learn one thing on how to be resilient. And going back to market is not going to happen if there is no collaboration. We're seeing yesterday debate and throughout the conference that private sector is saying we need help, and the government is saying what help do you need? But then it's not easy, right? So we need to collaborate, just like on recovery. we need to collaborate on standards. And I think what WTTC is doing on safe travel and now doing with sustainable tourism is something that we in Saudi are absolutely committed to right from the get-go.
Plus, your workforce 2 years ago was not in tourism. They had to be trained from the start.
Absolutely, and I think we have the most aggressive and ambitious target. We are, from zero, we are expected to get to, the targets we were set. And this is a people-led business. So if we don't have equally aggressive programs for employment and training, this won't happen. So we're committed to people development, and not just in the main cities, but also in the rural areas. And that's where Saudi has put $100 million in seed fund with the World Bank just to look at sustainable tourism through villages activations.
So that they're really driving it.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what country you're in, I think it's all tribal.
And you know what, Peter, if you look, since 2015 to 2018, it has grown 5% annually. However, if you look at the single sector that was growing most in the last decade, it's adventure. And it has been growing by an average of 65%. So if you can just bring in your sustainable strategies and policies into where the growth is on double digits, and far from just double digits, but 65%, I think that's where the greatest impact could happen. And particularly nowadays, because very cautious travelers that are looking for nature and so on, and you have the revenge travelers who still want to go and breathe and, and go on extreme adventure. So I think we can ride the wave.
Yes, good, Raki.
I think, Peter, to your point about it's tribal, whether you're in Claremont, California, or Osaka, Japan, or Riyadh, or Ras Al Khaimah, the common goal is the same, is we have to take care of this planet, we have to take care of sustainability, and at the end of the day, we have to take care of each other, and the way to do it is to work collaboratively, whether it's through organizations like WTTC or conferences like this, where you have 1,000 in person and other people connected online, but we have to get those metrics in place in order to be successful long-term and have proper tourism.
And for Norma and Luis, we talk about training, but we also talk about the conversation. That has to continue to be able to continue to talk to your guides, to be able to continue to talk to your team, but to the public in general. Otherwise, if you don't find common ground, everything we talked about today goes nowhere. Yes?
Sí. Peter, justamente.
Peter, the industry is being called to embrace code of conduct for the protection of boys, girls, and adolescents. Here we have very good practices in terms of codes at an international level, like the code. This is a code promoted by ECPAT as well as national codes. In fact, we want to be able to timely activate procedures to act in a coordinated way with the authorities by filing reports. We have some examples, not that you were speaking about this airline here in the region. Volaris is a Mexican carrier airline, and for 8 years now, Volaris has been partnered up with the code and ECPAT to protect children during flights. And we have had major experiences, such as we were able to retrieve 2 teenagers that were being taken out of the country to be trafficked. One was in 2018, and the other one was just 7 days ago, with the collaboration, of course, with the authorities to act timely. But we also have other good practices in the region that involve joining efforts, like the case of an experience in a city. The barrier is me, or the wall is me. This is the name. This is in Colombia, in Cartagena. We want Cartagena to protect the rights of boys, girls, and adolescents with the participation of different sectors, but also with the active participation of girls, boys, and adolescents, to bring together all of these in order to have protective environments. I believe that training is paramount, is critical. but we should also be able to report suspicious cases, and the industry plays an important role to support governments, to have advocacy on governments, to have the right mechanisms to file reports and to act immediately, because today we still see that many of these criminals, sexual perpetrators that are going after boys, girls, teenagers in different touristic destinations, they change jurisdictions to avoid their responsibility and to avoid law enforcement. So we have to continue working on this to be able together to make boys, girls, and adolescents to reach their potential so that they can exercise their rights in a protective manner.
With the last word on what you're expecting as we are emerging from COVID-19 and what your own travelers are going to be expecting moving forward.
Hablamos demasiado de que tenemos.
We have said that we have to change. Why? Well, we might feel proud of what tourism has given us. We are so successful that we have to change many things, but it is thanks to success. We are proud as professionals. Thanks to tourism, the world is more sustainable. Nobody else pays more attention to sustainability than tourism. Thanks to tourism, we have recovered the pride of people's handcrafts. Thanks to tourism, we have a more tolerant world. Thanks to tourism, natural heritage has been protected. Of course, we need a change, but let us not feel guilt in our sector. In my country, in some countries, tourism is highly criticized. Proudly, I feel proud to work in a sector that provides peace, that gives the possibility for interaction, that provides a recovery of traditions, that recovers the retrieval of respect to nature. So let us all feel proud of our profession and let us defend our profession, because there is a brilliant future in tourism. There's a brilliant future. The future is coming closer, although some things need to change, because living things change. We need to change alongside with that.
And on that note, please thank our panel, Luis, Todd, Geoffrey, Norma, and Raki. And I now throw it back to Kathleen.
Thanks, Peter. Good job.
Thanks, Rick.